Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a book review for Survive the Night by Riley Sager. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new content. I post new bookish videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down the description box below for links to my Buddy Read Discord and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways from me. Survive the Night is an adult thriller, and it is the 5th Riley Sager book that I have read, and I have reviewed all of the books that I've read, so I'll put a link to my thriller book review playlist up in the corner if you're interested in checking out those reviews. So I'm going to talk about just the premise of the book, some things that I liked, some things that I didn't like, and then I'll give the book an overall rating. I also will be talking about some spoilery things, so I will be putting timestamps down in the description box if you want to skip over the spoilery section. In Survive the Night, we're following a college student named Charlie, and Charlie is leaving college to go back home because her best friend and her roommate was murdered by this serial killer known as the Campus Killer. And Charlie is just having a really tough time digesting what happened to Maddie because she partially blames herself. She and Maddie were out at a party and they got into kind of a fight, and Charlie left Maddie at the party, and then Maddie never returned home. And Charlie, before she left, saw a guy approach Maddie and like offer to light her cigarette, etc. But she couldn't really see his face because it was dark, it was night, it was shadow. So Charlie has kind of like survivor's guilt because she thinks that she could have saved Maddie if she just stayed around at the party. So Charlie is leaving college. She is on her way home. This book takes place in the 90s, so there is no, Uber, there's no cell phones, none of that. And Charlie also does not drive because her parents were killed in a car crash when she was a young teenager, and she's been raised by her grandmother ever since. So Charlie has a fear of driving, so she needs someone to drive her home. And the way that she does this is she posts that she needs a ride on this rider board at her local college, and this guy named Josh accepts the offer. They don't know each other, so the two of them decide to ride back to Ohio because he's going that way, she's going that way. As Josh and Charlie are driving away from the college and into the middle of nowhere to get to Ohio, Charlie starts to suspect that Josh is actually the campus killer based on some things that he said, based on the way that he's acting. Just a bunch of strange things are going on. So Charlie has to figure out how she's going to get out of the car and away from Josh and find someone to help her, especially given that they're in the middle of nowhere, there's no cell phones, etc. One funny thing about Charlie is that she does have some sort of mental illness where she kind of hallucinates, and she calls it movies in her mind because Charlie loves movies, she lives for movies, she's going to get her degree in cinematography, and that is like her life. So she'll see a situation and the situation will play out differently than what actually happened in reality, and she calls it movies in her mind. And she actually was on some sort of medication to help this, but she stopped taking the medication. So I think that was probably a really good move on Riley Sager's part because we're following Charlie. She's the narrator. We're in her head, yet we don't know if what she's telling the reader is actually reality because of this condition. So he developed early on an unreliable narrator, which is my favorite type of narrator in a thriller. So moving on to the things that I like, the unreliable narrator, which I just talked about. I also really liked how Riley Sager was able to create a thriller book where the majority of the setting takes place in a car. Like, he was able to just create so much suspense and mystery just among the conversation between Charlie and Josh, who's driving. And I just thought that was just really talented on his part to be able to do that just with words and not a lot of setting. I also felt like Charlie was a very well-developed character. She has a lot of inner monologue. She's very emotional. I found that she was very real, and I think a lot of people could connect with some of the things that she was going through, especially someone who's like young and in college and experienced, having to grow up too fast because of trauma in their life. So I felt like Charlie was a really well-written character, very relatable. So now I'm going to talk about the things that I didn't like, and I'm going to be getting into some spoilery things here. So go ahead and skip over this section if you don't want to be spoiled. But the first thing is that there are technically two antagonists, and I was not expecting that. So it was a good twist that Riley Sager threw in there. It just wasn't a twist that I liked. So what we learn is that Josh, the driver of the car, is actually a bounty hunter, and he hadn't had a job in a while, and he gets hired by this woman named Marge. And Marge wants Josh to kidnap Charlie and bring Charlie to her so she can question her about who killed her granddaughter, Maddie. And Josh is like, doesn't have a job, and he takes this job for $20,000 from Marge. First off, like, that just ruined any type of respect I had for Josh to like kidnap and trick and lie to this poor girl to put her in the hands of this crazy woman. Anyway, so then we get to Marge. So Marge eventually gets, Charlie in her possession and threatens to torture her until she can tell her who killed Maddie. Like, aren't you going after the wrong person, Marge? Shouldn't you be trying to find your granddaughter's killer, not torturing a poor girl who could not see because it was nighttime and who has a mental illness where she hallucinates? Like, you're going after the wrong person. I just didn't understand. I mean, I understood her motivations. They were just completely irrational. And then the next thing is that Marge is elderly. She is currently going through chemotherapy. She has cancer, stage 4 cancer. Now, I fortunately have never experienced chemotherapy, but my understanding is that it's really hard on the body. Like, it makes you tired, it makes you weak, it makes you sick. And yet this woman was able to kidnap a young 20-year-old girl and like tie her up. I just didn't believe it, especially if you're an elderly person who's sick going through chemotherapy. I'm pretty sure a 20-year-old could overpower you. So that whole situation just was not believable for me. Was not believable. I just found Marge to be a really weak antagonist. I didn't like that part of the story at all. And then we get into the part where we actually learn who the real campus killer is, which is Charlie's boyfriend, Robbie. So I wasn't a fan of this either, and I don't know why I didn't think that Robbie could be the killer, because Riley Sager always introduces characters, and at the end we learn that one of the characters is like the bad person, so I don't know why I thought this would be any different. Robbie is actually the campus killer, and he comes to Charlie's to help Charlie. She gets a hold of him, and he comes to try and save her in the middle of the wilderness where Marge has her, held up and kidnapped. And then Charlie learns he's the campus killer on accident. And I just found that to be a really, really weak ending, because think about it. If you're at a party and your best friend's boyfriend comes up to you and you're still like in view of your best friend, wouldn't you be like, hey, Charlie, here's Robbie. He just showed up. Come back in. Let's all hang out. And if you're Maddie and your best friend's boyfriend comes up to you and starts hitting on you, I just feel like maybe you should step away from the situation, or I don't know, not go off with him. And that's essentially what happened. She went off with Robbie to do whatever they were going to do, and they killed her. But I'm like, the whole book, Charlie is obsessed with Maddie. Like, Maddie was amazing. She was full of life. She was my best friend. I love her. I'm depressed because she's gone. Look, girl, she was about to go off with your boyfriend and do who knows what. And that was never even like touched upon in the book. Like, Riley Sager didn't even touch upon that. Like, I just found that situation weird. Why would Robbie go up to Maddie when Charlie is literally within like viewing distance? It's just dark. It's nighttime. They're in the back of a bar. So it didn't make a lot of sense. So a lot of the decisions that Riley Sager made regarding this plot, for me personally, just didn't make a lot of sense, and I didn't like them. Unfortunately, the lack of strong antagonists and then the weak twist at the end really, really brought this story down for me. And it's probably one of the least enjoyable Riley Sager books that I've read. So I ended up giving this book a 2 out of 5 stars. However, I do still like Riley Sager, and I will continue to read his work. All right, you guys, let me know in the comments if you've read this book and what you thought about it, or what some of your favorite Riley Sager books are. And I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye.